What's up, guys? It is Patricia from tarantulaheaven.com, and today we are going to talk about tarantula migration and their pattern. Before I get too far, I want to introduce you guys to Miss Spidey. If you are new here, this is my Chilean rosehair. She is currently in her little house, so she may or may not move. She's been sitting there for a little bit while I film, so I hope she does something cool. But if she doesn't, we're still going to talk about something cool. So please continue to watch. So I've made a video about tarantula mating before. Tarantula mating, in case you didn't know, is a really crazy process. It is one of the probably the most dangerous processes because usually the male gets cannibalized either during or even before or after the process is happening. But that is not the only interesting part of this. There's actually, in the rituals and in the courtship part of this thing, there is this migration process too. And as the seasons change, I have been really interested in the way that different animals have these certain like internal patterns and pulls that they just have these really interesting drives to go to a different place. And something that I wonder quite a bit about is tarantula intelligence. And as far as we know, tarantulas aren't really wired or have the connections and stuff that we have, or even other animals have, to actually think about these things, but they certainly do have certain biological drives or, animal drives, instinctual drives, and migration apparently seems to be one of them. And I definitely do believe that tarantulas at least have the intelligence to go through seasonal patterns. For example, like clockwork, even though Spidey is always indoors, as is Blinky, my little Arizona blonde, who is not here right now because they are just underground. But without fail, once it starts to get colder, they sense it. And maybe it's because of the temperature in the house is a little bit different, but it's like clockwork, and they just kind of slow down on their eating responses. They tend to not be as active, which is possibly why Spidey is not really moving around too much right now. And yes, so in these seasonal patterns, migration is part of it. So I'm in the US, so the research that I have is pretty much based in the US, so I don't know what it looks like around other parts of the world, but in the US, we actually have a few places where there is tarantula migration that can be seen and witnessed. So one of them is in Colorado. Another place where tarantulas will migrate is Texas, which is pretty cool. I honestly haven't been to either of these places, but I would like to one day once the pandemic is gone. In Colorado, this happens kind of during the fall. In Texas, it tends to happen during the summer. But what happens is, usually while the females tend to stay in their burrows and close to home, the male tarantulas are the ones who will migrate, and they will literally migrate like thousands of them. They will cross roads, they will do all sorts of crazy stuff in search for a mate. And you may not necessarily see these tarantulas in like packs like you might with other you will see a lot of them, but from the research I did, it's not that they flock together like let's say birds. I'm probably not using the right terminology as a flock. I don't know what to call a flock of tarantulas or a herd of tarantulas. I don't know. You won't necessarily get that. You will see a lot of them, but these tarantulas are traveling individually. They are not part of a pack as far as the research that I did said. And not all of them make it. As with, I'm sure other animals who migrate or have some sort of pattern that they travel through, this can be a very dangerous journey. Whether you're in Colorado or Texas, there are going to be roads, there's going to be traffic. I know, unfortunately, I think some people will stop for things like turtles or a duck with her babies and things like that. But I unfortunately don't believe that people would be super sympathetic to seeing a bunch of tarantulas walk across the road. Unfortunately, we still live in a world that is not very compassionate towards these animals. So I would love to believe that when people stumble upon tarantulas walking across the road, that they would stop. But I don't know. I can't really say confidently that probably happens. My feeling is that probably people are pretty indifferent to this, or they may even be more likely to express violence against tarantulas and run them over. So this is pretty dangerous for tarantulas. But this primitive drive that they have is very strong, and so they're still going to try. And people can actually predict when this tarantula migration pattern is going to start. And it's not because they start seeing a bunch of tarantulas. Actually, I found this pretty interesting. It's because they start seeing tarantula hawks. And tarantula hawks are basically these wasps that are a pretty big danger and predator to tarantulas. So these tarantula hawks will start appearing a lot more when the tarantulas are in the migration process. I thought this was pretty interesting, and I was inspired to create this video and do this research kind of in an indirect way because I belong to a lot of tarantula Facebook groups, and I can't remember where I saw this, but I saw a really, really cool video about these little slings that were in captivity in a tank, and they were walking in a line, like a very clear line. And I thought that was so cool. And I couldn't necessarily find any research on that, but I was wondering if it was some sort of migration pattern. And like, I can't find the post anymore. Maybe it was deleted, or maybe I didn't save it and I thought I did, but it was really, really cool. And that made me start thinking about like, what do we actually know about tarantula patterns in this way? So, you know, I didn't get my original question answered, but I feel like I at least got to educate myself and perhaps you about tarantulas actually having like clear instinctual drives to travel in the same direction in certain parts of the world. Anyway, guys, I hope that was useful. I like to kind of do some research topics every now and then because I am still learning, as are you, I'm sure, and that's why you're on this channel. So I hope this was useful and added to your knowledge of tarantulas. All right, guys, you take care, stay safe, and I hope to see you in my next video. All right, bye, guys. Have a good Tarantula Tuesday.